Hi, my name is Jared Mello, and here we have another episode of Mello Mentoring. Thank you everyone who's been liking, commenting, and subscribing. Please do, if you have not already, and hit the notification bell. I'm also going to be adding my Bitcoin address and my PayPal email address in case anyone ever feels so inclined to give me donations. I do a lot of work right now, like 50, 60 hours a week of Lyft, and anything I can get from this and my coaching practice would be greatly appreciated. Now today's video is going to be about the original Red Pillar, the person who became Red Pill aware, I believe, first, and his name was Oscar Wilde. And I'm going to go over a slew of his quotes right here to kind of prove my theory that he was the original person to have this way of thinking. So here we go. Life imitates art far more than art imitates life. And I equate this exactly to the movies and romance, right? People try to act like they're in the movies by acting the way they did to see the guy get the girl in the movie, but it's not really what works, right? The guy who's complacent and subservient and does anything to get the woman's approval in the movie, it works in the movies, but in real life, that doesn't work. What works is more of a guy who's very strong, centered, and independent, maybe even an ass. They get the girl. But art does not imitate life in that way. We try to sometimes imitate art in our own lives, but how does it work? Not frickin' good. So, he was onto it. It takes a great deal of courage to see the world in all of its tainted glory and still love it. That is self-explanatory. There's a lot of bad people out there, and to look past all of that and to love it still, that is pretty impressive. But we also can focus on what's good too. We can focus on the positive more so than the negative, but we can't ignore the negative because that would just be ignorant and naive. What you read when you don't have to determines what you will be when you can't help it. This is a good one because what we program our mind with absolutely makes a difference. What we read when we don't have to, that determines how we're going to act. It's just neuroplasticity at its finest. Everything we take in changes our brain, changes the neural pathways. The only question is, how are we changing it? I think it's very healthy to spend time alone. You need to know how to be alone and not be defined by another person. That one also was awesome because a lot of people don't know how to be alone. They need the company of others. They need the validation. They need to be defined by that other person. But only the people who have a strong sense of independence don't have to be that way. The one who's strong and thinks that, hey, I'm the fun. I'm the person who is the prize. That's how you know you've mastered how to enjoy spending time with yourself. Women are meant to be loved, not understood. Self-explanatory. The pure and simple truth is rarely pure and never simple. This is also true. The motivations of most people are absolutely not usually pure. Often they can be hypergamous in nature or just wanting something from someone else, often sex. Makes sense. Fashion is a form of ugliness so intolerable that we have to alter it every 6 months. And it's also true. Never love anyone who treats you like you're ordinary. This comes down to respecting ourselves. When we truly respect ourselves, we will not allow people and love people that don't value us equally in return. We just won't, because you can't love someone that doesn't value you without lowering your own self-worth and respect for yourself. It's just impossible. There has to be a meeting. There has to be someone meeting you halfway, or eventually you're going to disrespect yourself. Most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions, their lives a mimicry, their passions a quotation. And this is absolutely true. Most people don't have the ability to own who they really are and to be themselves because they're afraid. They're afraid that their true selves will be rejected or ridiculed, and they can't handle it. But so most people instead, they wear a mask and they just follow in others' footsteps, people who are playing it safe, or maybe people who have done well, but they'd rather come in second to them than try to trailblaze their own path. Everything in the world is about sex, except sex. Sex is about power. Seems about right to me. Every interaction, there's always a sexual undertone until you get to the bedroom. And then, power dynamic. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. And this is why it's so hard, especially for women, to stay in a loving marriage and be into their man, because what does marriage do? It eliminates uncertainty. You vow to be with someone till death do you part. That's the definition of certainty. And romance is predicated upon uncertainty. Women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. Scientific fact. Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth. Again, goes back to being afraid to be rejected for who he or she really is. Some cause happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go. Yep. Education is an admirable thing, but it is well to remember from time to time that nothing worth knowing can be taught. And to me, this means life's most important lessons we have to learn for ourselves. We have to grow through it. We have to get and have our own experiences. We can't be taught these things. They really stick when we go through it the hard way with our experiences. I don't want to be at the mercy of my emotions. I want to use them, enjoy them, and to dominate them. I agree. Being at the mercy of one's own emotions is a very powerless feeling. And if we remain emotionally independent, we will be at the mercy of our emotions as seldom as possible. We will be controlling our realities. We'll have our frame, and we're going to guard our hearts. I have the simplest of tastes. I am always satisfied with the best. That does make things simple. A man's face is his autobiography. A woman's face is her work of fiction. Isn't that true? And especially for men, have you ever heard the expression, we're responsible for our face once we turn 40? And it's because people's faces contort to their personalities. They contort to their assertiveness level, or are they a doormat, or whatever they may be. But you can just tell by looking at people's faces, oh, that person has strong boundaries. Or no, actually that person's probably a pushover. That combined with the energy they give off speaks very loudly. It really does. And one day I might do a video about explaining the differences between like really assertive people's faces and doormats' faces. The doormats' faces just look soft and weaker. And the assertive guys can have more square, assertive looking eyes. It's just the way it is. And women, though, their face absolutely is a work of fiction. When one is in love, one always begins by deceiving oneself, and one always ends by deceiving others. This is what the world calls a romance. And we deceive oneself when in love, especially if we become emotionally dependent, because we are letting our feet get off the ground. We are losing ourselves. And then when we lose ourselves in that lovey-dovey dopamine feeling, what happens is we begin to ignore red flags. So we're beginning to deceive ourselves. Oh, this person they're perfect. We begin to put them on a pedestal. But then as a relationship goes on, then the things begin to reverse. We begin to see actually who they are eventually. And then lies occur and other nonsense occurs. Not good. Another Oscar Wilde quote I didn't write down is, he goes, one should always be in love, and that is why one should never marry. Think about that one. Never marry at all, Dorian. Men marry because they are tired, women because they are curious, both are disappointed. This is very similar to the MG Toe movement, but the Disney fairy tale of just finding one person, one soulmate, I used to believe in that. But I'm finding as I get older, I don't. I'm believing that we just gotta take things day by day. And we never have the freedom to just be careless like that and to think, oh, once I do this, we'll go off into the sunset. It's like, no. There is no get to a certain point, then coast. We have to work every day at our relationships. We have to work every day to communicate, to be honest, to continue to date someone. And it's like, guess what? We don't know whether we're going to grow in the same direction as someone else or not when we marry them. We just don't. And sometimes people who are healthy and they're growing in the best direction for them, it's going to be in a different direction as someone else. So how can you constrict it like that? How can you constrict your growth by someone else? And this is why so many marriages just don't work. We live in an age where unnecessary things are our only necessities. iPhones, and all these gadgets, social networking. I mean, come on. Ahead of his time. I mean, Oscar Wilde's from the late 1800s, so he was really a revolutionary thinker. How can a woman be expected to be happy with a man who insists on treating her as if she were a perfectly normal human being? Women are what they are, right? They have their natures, they have what they're attracted to. Biologically speaking, they've been programmed. They are what they are. They can't help it. Very emotionally driven creatures. Men just need to learn to adapt to it. Don't cry about it. Don't complain about it. Work with it. Go with the flow. In any situation, we can do one of two things. We can either try to fight the source of the issue, like, oh, women shouldn't be this way, or we can just go with it, work on ourselves, and do the best we can to deal with the problem. There are moments when one has to choose between living one's own life fully, entirely, completely, or dragging out some false, shallow, degrading existence that the world in its hypocrisy demands. This is an awesome one, especially for entrepreneurs, because it's absolutely true. We can either live our own life and run after it, like I have my plans with the book I'm writing, with this YouTube channel, which is my coaching practice, and then political aspirations later on. Or I can give it all up and just go work for someone else's dreams and be a cog in their wheel. And to me, that's a fate almost like committing suicide. It's like death. I can't handle that, and that's why I'm doing this. I need the freedom to blossom and to grow into what I really want to be and chase my dreams. Now, I might have to do those other things to get to where I want to be, but I'm never going to give up on my dreams. Laughter is not at all a bad beginning for a friendship, and it is by far the best ending. Self-explanatory. We don't need to be complaining about how things went down, and with lack of acceptance, not good. In this world, there are two tragedies. One is not getting what one wants, and the other is getting it. And isn't that the case? I think Oscar Wilde also said, when God is really unhappy with us, he answers our prayers. Meaning, sometimes what we think we want, when we get it, we've bitten off a little more than we can chew. And sometimes it's best to just kind of go with the flow a little bit. Have dreams, have goals, but any one thing we want a lot, we really got to check our motives. Like, why do we want this so badly? Especially if it's another person. Something just to check. So those are my quotes by Oscar Wilde there, the original Red Pill aware person. And he's a pretty awesome guy. He wrote books like The Portrait of Dorian Gray, etc. And I'd highly recommend you check out some of his works. So, again, I'd also love to hear some people talk to me about their relationship issues. Email them to me, and I'll answer them anonymously on air. And that's all I got for you today. Have a great rest of your weekend here.